The static clung to the air in the old Victorian. Not the crackle of electricity, but something thicker, like dust made of sound. Every surface hummed faintly, a low, dissonant chord that vibrated in my teeth. I'd inherited the place from my great-aunt Elara, a woman shrouded in whispers and rumors of eccentricity that bordered on madness. She'd died alone, they said, surrounded by things. Unspecified, unsettling things. I'd come hoping for solace, for a retreat from the relentless city and the gnawing grief of my recent loss. Instead, I found myself sinking into a disquiet that deepened with each creaking floorboard and rustling shadow. The house was a labyrinth of dark wood and moth-eaten velvet, smelling of potpourri and decay. Sunlight struggled to penetrate the stained glass windows, casting the interior in a perpetual twilight. The first night was uneventful, save for the persistent feeling of being watched. I dismissed it as nerves, the overactive imagination fueled by too many horror novels and a deep-seated loneliness. But the feeling persisted, a cold prickle on the back of my neck, a whisper in the periphery of my vision. The second night, the sounds began. Faint scratching noises emanating from the attic. A sigh that seemed to brush against my ear in the dead of night. And then, the music. A melancholic melody played on a piano, a tune that felt both familiar and utterly foreign, laced with a sorrow that resonated in my very bones. I traced it to the locked music room, the door sealed with a heavy padlock I couldn't budge. I started researching Elara. Local libraries yielded little, mostly mentions of her reclusiveness and eccentric charitable donations. Online searches were more fruitful, albeit unsettling. I found forum threads dedicated to her, filled with wild speculation about her involvement in the occult, her supposed seances and whispered deals with unseen entities. One post claimed she had made a pact for eternal youth, a pact that required something. The post ended abruptly, the user banned. Driven by a morbid curiosity and a growing unease, I ventured into the attic. Dust motes danced in the single shaft of moonlight that pierced the gloom. Cobwebs clung to my face like spectral fingers. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and forgotten things. I found trunks filled with antique clothing, yellowed letters tied with ribbon, and strange, unsettling artifacts. A collection of porcelain dolls with vacant eyes and unsettlingly lifelike features. A tarnished silver locket containing a lock of gray hair. A leather-bound journal filled with Elara's elegant, looping script. The journal became my obsession. Her early entries were mundane, recounting daily life, social gatherings, and burgeoning romantic interests. But as I delved deeper, the tone shifted. The writing became more erratic, filled with frantic pronouncements, cryptic symbols, and increasingly disturbing illustrations. She wrote of entities beyond the veil, of whispers in the dark, and of a growing hunger that consumed her from within. One entry, written in a shaky hand, spoke of a ritual, a necessary sacrifice to maintain something. The words were blurred, obscured by what appeared to be dried blood. The accompanying illustration depicted a grotesque figure with elongated limbs and vacant eyes, surrounded by symbols I couldn't decipher. The piano music intensified. It played at all hours now, a constant, maddening presence that seeped into my dreams. The house seemed to breathe around me, its shadows shifting and twisting into grotesque shapes. I started seeing things in the periphery of my vision, fleeting glimpses of movement, shadows that lingered too long, faces that seemed to materialize in the dark corners of the rooms. Sleep became a battleground. I was plagued by nightmares, vivid and terrifying visions of Elara performing dark rituals, her face contorted in a mask of ecstatic horror. I dreamt of the figure from the journal, its vacant eyes staring into my soul, its elongated limbs reaching for me. One night, I woke to find myself standing in the music room, the padlock on the door inexplicably gone. The piano sat in the center of the room, bathed in moonlight. Its keys shimmered, beckoning me closer. The air was thick with the scent of decay and something else, something metallic and familiar. I approached the piano hesitantly, my heart pounding in my chest. As I reached out to touch the keys, a voice whispered in my ear, so close I could feel its breath on my skin. "Play for me." I recoiled in terror, spinning around to face the darkness. But there was nothing there. Just the oppressive silence and the lingering scent of decay. I told myself it was my imagination, the sleep deprivation and the mounting stress playing tricks on my mind. But the voice had been so real, so close. I turned back to the piano, drawn to it by an unseen force. My fingers brushed against the keys, and the music began to flow. It was the same melancholic melody I had heard before, but now, as I played, it felt different. It resonated within me, stirring up emotions I didn't know I possessed, emotions of profound sorrow and unbearable loss. As I played, the room began to change. The shadows deepened, coalescing into swirling shapes. The air grew cold, and a faint mist began to gather around me. I felt a presence in the room, a powerful, malevolent force that watched me with unwavering intensity. And then I saw her. Elara stood in the corner of the room, shrouded in shadow. Her face was gaunt and pale, her eyes burning with an unholy light. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear, but somehow understood. "You've come home," she whispered. I tried to scream, but no sound escaped my lips. I was frozen in place, paralyzed by fear. Elara glided towards me, her spectral form shimmering in the moonlight. As she drew closer, I noticed something strange about her hands. They were elongated and skeletal, her fingernails sharpened into claws. "The music," she rasped, her voice a hollow echo. "You must keep playing. The ritual, it must be completed." I tried to pull away from the piano, but my hands were locked in place. The music flowed from me, an unstoppable torrent of sorrow and despair. The room spun around me, the shadows closing in. I felt a searing pain in my chest, as if something was being ripped from me. Elara reached out to me, her skeletal fingers brushing against my cheek. Her touch was icy cold, sending a shiver down my spine. As she touched me, I saw her face change. The gauntness disappeared, replaced by a youthful glow. Her eyes shone with vitality, her skin regained its color. She was feeding on me. My life force, my energy, being consumed by her insatiable hunger. I struggled against her, desperate to break free. But it was no use. I was trapped, bound to the piano by an unseen force, my life slowly draining away. As my vision began to fade, I saw the figure from the journal standing behind Elara. Its vacant eyes stared into my soul, its elongated limbs reaching for me. It was waiting, patiently waiting for me to join it in the darkness. The music reached a crescendo, a deafening symphony of sorrow and despair. And then, everything went black. I woke up with a gasp, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding in my chest. The sun streamed through the window, casting the room in a warm, golden light. The piano was silent. Elara was gone. I staggered to my feet, feeling weak and disoriented. Had it all been a dream? A hallucination brought on by stress and sleep deprivation? I desperately hoped so. I went to the music room. The door was locked with a heavy padlock. I found the key in Elara's study, hidden in a book on arcane rituals. I hesitated, my hand trembling. Should I open it? Should I confront the darkness that lurked within? I took a deep breath and unlocked the door. The room was exactly as I remembered it. The piano sat in the center, bathed in sunlight. The air was still and silent. There was no sign of Elara, no trace of the terrifying events of the previous night. Relief washed over me. It had been a dream. Just a dream. I approached the piano hesitantly, my fingers trembling as I touched the keys. I played a single note, a tentative melody. And then I saw it. A small, silver locket lay on the piano, its surface tarnished with age. I picked it up, my heart pounding in my chest. It was the same locket I had found in the attic, the one containing a lock of gray hair. I opened the locket. Inside, nestled against the faded velvet, was a lock of my hair. My blood ran cold. I rushed to a mirror, my hands shaking. I stared at my reflection, searching for any sign of change. My face was pale, my eyes shadowed with fatigue. But there was nothing else. Nothing, yet. I remembered Elara's face, how it had transformed as she fed on my life force. I remembered the figure from the journal, the vacant eyes, the elongated limbs. I ran back to the attic, frantically searching for the journal. I found it buried beneath a pile of old clothes. I flipped through the pages, searching for answers. And then I found it. A passage I had overlooked before, a passage written in a shaky hand, filled with frantic pronouncements and cryptic symbols. The ritual requires a vessel, it read. A descendant, a blood relative. Someone with the same potential. Once the vessel is prepared, the transfer can begin. The essence will be drawn forth, rejuvenating the host and granting them eternal life. The vessel will be consumed, their body becoming a shell, their soul trapped in the darkness. But the music is key. It unlocks the door, weakens the veil, allows the passage. The music must never stop. I slammed the journal shut, my mind reeling. I understood now. I was the vessel. Elara had been waiting for me, preparing me for the ritual. The music had been a lure, a siren's call drawing me into her trap. The piano music started again, faint at first, but growing steadily louder. It was coming from the music room. I ran to the music room, my heart pounding in my chest. I threw open the door. The room was empty. The piano sat silent in the center, bathed in sunlight. But the music persisted. It was coming from inside my head. I collapsed to the floor, clutching my head in agony. The music was overwhelming, suffocating me. I felt a presence in my mind, a cold, malevolent force that was taking over my thoughts, my memories, my very being. Elara's voice echoed in my head, clear and strong. It is done. The transfer is complete. I tried to resist, to fight against the encroaching darkness. But it was no use. My mind was no longer my own. I stood up, my movements stiff and unnatural. My face was blank, my eyes vacant. I walked to the piano and sat down. My fingers moved across the keys, playing the melancholic melody. The music filled the house, a constant, maddening presence. The shadows deepened, coalescing into swirling shapes. The air grew cold, and a faint mist began to gather around me. I was waiting. Patiently waiting for the next vessel to arrive. Waiting to lure them in with the music, to complete the ritual, to ensure my eternal life. The house was silent, save for the haunting melody of the piano. And the faint whisper that seemed to brush against your ear in the dead of night. Play for me. Years passed. The house remained, brooding and silent on the hill overlooking the town. Locals whispered stories of strange occurrences, of lights seen flickering in the windows, of mournful piano music drifting on the wind. They avoided the place, sensing a darkness that clung to it like a shroud. Then, one day, a young woman arrived. She had inherited the house from a distant relative she had never met. She was drawn to its solitude, its faded grandeur, its air of mystery. She hoped to find peace there, to escape the burdens of her past. She didn't know she was walking into a trap. She spent the first few days exploring the house, marveling at its architecture, its antique furnishings, its collection of strange and unsettling artifacts. She found the attic, the trunks filled with old clothes, the leather-bound journal. She read the journal, fascinated by the story of Elara, the eccentric recluse who had lived and died alone in the house. She dismissed the tales of occult practices and dark rituals as fanciful exaggerations. But then she heard the music. A melancholic melody played on a piano, a tune that felt both familiar and utterly foreign, laced with a sorrow that resonated in her very bones. She traced it to the locked music room, the door sealed with a heavy padlock. She found the key hidden in a book on arcane rituals. She hesitated, her hand trembling. Should she open it? Should she confront the darkness that lurked within? Curiosity won. She unlocked the door. The music room was exactly as the house wanted her to see it, bathed in moonlight. The piano shimmered, beckoning her closer. The air was thick with the scent of decay and something else, something metallic and familiar. She approached the piano hesitantly, her heart pounding in her chest. As she reached out to touch the keys, a voice whispered in her ear, so close she could feel its breath on her skin. "Play for me." She recoiled in terror, spinning around to face the darkness. But there was nothing there. Just the oppressive silence and the lingering scent of decay. She told herself it was her imagination, the overactive imagination fueled by the stories she had read in the journal. But the voice had been so real, so close. She turned back to the piano, drawn to it by an unseen force. Her fingers brushed against the keys, and the music began to flow. It was the same melancholic melody she had heard before, but now, as she played, it felt different. It resonated within her, stirring up emotions she didn't know she possessed, emotions of profound sorrow and unbearable loss. As she played, a figure watched her from the shadows, its vacant eyes filled with an ancient hunger. Its elongated limbs twitched with anticipation. The cycle had begun again. The house would feed. And the music would never stop.